Welcome and thank you for standing by. Currently, all participants are in a listen-only mode. Today's webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be posted publicly. If you have any objections, you may disconnect at this time. Now I'd like to turn the call over to your host for today, Linda Lee.
Thank you, Lisa. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Exploring Census Data webinar series. To those that have been following our series for years, welcome back, and thank you for your continued support. So my name is Linda Lee, and today we will be taking a look at how to identify key data that can help you in developing a business plan. Our presenters will provide information on the data that is available and also do a live demo on how to access as well. So let's go ahead and hop right into the presentation. First, let's take a look at the Exploring Census Data webinar series. It is a set of monthly webinars presented by topics where we include real-life use cases when possible. The webinars are presented by subject matter experts and include a Q&A feature. You can submit your questions during the presentation and also at the end during the Q&A segment. And to learn more about the series, please use the first link. And to view our past webinars, please use the second link to visit the Census Academy site. Also, please note that we are utilizing technology from multiple locations, and we aim to provide you with the best experience possible. Should we experience any technical delays, please utilize the chat feature to let us know of issues, and we will mitigate them as soon as possible. So about the Census Bureau. The Census Bureau is the federal government's largest statistical agency where we conduct over 130 surveys each year. Listed here are some of our well-known surveys. First is the decennial census, the once-a-decade population and housing count of the U.S. Next is the American Community Survey. This is the annual survey of the nation's population. Now, on the business data side of the house, we have the economic census. This is the official measure of American businesses. It is conducted every 5 years during the years ending in 2 and 7. It is the most comprehensive source for business data, and it is also used for benchmarking our other business surveys and programs. Now, the economic census also has a public sector counterpart called the Census of Governments. And similarly, it is measured every 5 years in the years ending in 2 and 7. And now I would like to turn the presentation over to our first presenter, Lucy. All yours, Lucy.
Alrighty, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much, Linda, for that intro. My name is Lucy Aline. I work in the DUTAW branch, which stands for Data User and Trade Outreach Branch. I have joined this branch in 2023. However, I have about a little bit over 6 years of experience at the U.S. Census Bureau. I have co-authored a couple of America Counts articles as well as infographic programs here. And I received my degree at Arizona State University. Today, I will go over our outline for this session before I present it over to my co-presenter, Adam. So let us take a look at what's happening today. Adam will guide us through a brief overview of the economic data, including key surveys in the Census Bureau Directorate and how understanding the levels of geographic in the Economic Directorate can assist you with developing a comprehensive business plan. Adam will then speak about the NAICS code hierarchy, and NAICS, that stands for North American Industry Classification System, and how these concepts can go a very long way in not only understanding economic data, but forming our own business plan. Following, he will go over some key data, that is data.census.gov, as well as the Census Business Builder, where he will give us a full grasp of how to formulate a data-driven business plan for success. Then we will end today's webinar with a question and answer session led by our subject matter expert. Currently, you can see on your screen, there's a pyramid. That's how the Economic Directorate is structured. On the right of that, your screen currently, On the top of that pyramid, you can locate the high frequency data. An example of that will be Business Trends and Outlook Survey, which measures the basic pulse of what's going on with small businesses in the United States. Below that, our monthly and quarterly surveys, they have small sample sizes and provide very timely data. Some examples of this will be the quarterly workforce indicators and the monthly manufacturer shipments, inventories, and orders, also known as M3, that produces durable goods report for the economic indicators. Next, you can see our annual surveys. Those, for example, we have annual integrated economic survey. Those have a larger sample size and they produce the most up-to-date trend data available. One thing about us, we do, as was mentioned by Linda, we do have comprehensive censuses that's done in the years ending in 2 and 7. Those censuses are the Census of Governments, measures government activities, and the Economic Census, which is a comprehensive look at most employer businesses in the United States. Lastly, we have our administrative data from the business registry, which uses information from IRS to help us supplement and produce additional economic products like county business patterns, which we'll discuss further, and annual, which is an annual economic program. Each of these categories that were just mentioned from the pyramid, they actually benchmark into each other. For example, the monthly and quarterly surveys are benchmarked into the annual surveys, while the annuals are benchmarked into our economic census. Now on our page, if next screen, we see the chart that shows the next hierarchy. We here at the Economics Directorate prefer that you start at a higher level, like use your 4-digit industry group level, and that way you are able to have more of an in-depth starting for your search and description as well. So if you look at the left side of the screen, it says establishments. When we refer to the word establishments, that is a single physical location of a business. Companies and or firm, that we refer to that as multiple establishments within that company. So example, if we were to create a fictitious restaurant, we'll name it Adam's Restaurant, that has 5 locations in the state of Connecticut. What we will say is that is one company that has 5 establishments. Go ahead. Next slide, please. And at this time, I am happy to welcome our outreach specialist, Adam Grundy, who will be presenting the remainder of this webinar today. He is a supervisory statistician in the Economic Directorate of Census Bureau. And he also works in the same division, DUTOP. Adam has over 16 years of experience working on various surveys and programs and has a vast knowledge of business data. Adam often coordinates several activities with the outreach area, including conducted presentations and webinars like the one we're having today. Adam has written several key articles for the Census Bureau, America Counts Stories, on census.gov. He also, for his education, attended the St. Mary's College right here in our state of Maryland, and which is where he received his degree. And he also has a certificate in elementary education. So now, without further ado, I am turning this over to Adam Grundy, my supervisor, who is ready to take us into a deeper dive into the world of the census economic data.
Thank you, Lucy, and thank you, Linda, for the warm introductions. So I'm going to level set with you guys a couple different surveys and programs that are going to help us with forming a data-driven business plan. So this slide talks about where these data come from. The first one is the economic census, which we mentioned before, is the most comprehensive economic data available, conducted every 5 years, digits ending with 2 and 7. Also, I'll talk about today a new survey called the Annual Integrated Economic Survey, which combines 7 of our annual surveys into one big comprehensive survey. Also, 2 annual programs that are very popular each year. County Business Patterns, which covers the employer establishments with paid employees in the United States. And then we have our non-employer statistics. These cover all the non-employer establishments in the United States, which are mostly self-employed persons. You can see a caveat to that in the asterisk below. And then, of course, the annual business survey is another survey I'll be talking about today. And that covers employer businesses in the United States. It includes rich demographics about our great business owners in the United States as well. All right, so let's dive into the first one, the economic census. The URL is below where you can follow along to get more information about the economic census. So, like I mentioned before, it's conducted every 5 years. The businesses for the 2022 economic census reported their 2022 year-end numbers. The responses were strictly confidential and only used for our statistical purposes here at the Census Bureau. The data covers over 19 economic sectors and encompass 950 NAICS industries and almost 20,000 geographic areas. So it covers a lot of NAICS material, and it also covers a lot of geographic areas that go down to even the zip code level. This includes the number of establishments. So again, that's a term that Lucy mentioned before. That's a single physical location of a business. We also have products, revenue, or all better known as sales for some types of industries, employment, payroll, and much more from the economic census. Data was released all the way through last month of March of 2026. On this slide, I'm going to talk about the economic census coverage. So the economic census only covered businesses with paid employees and not the non-employers. So while there's 38 million businesses approximately in the United States, 8 million of those are employer business establishments. And 4 million of those businesses, of the ones with paid employees, receive the economic census. So this slide is telling you that there's about 30 million businesses that are non-employers. So it's just one of the things to consider as I go throughout this presentation, how they factor into the economy. So getting back to the economic census, we have a couple of different things. We're always looking for new and changing industries in the economic census every 5 years. So the first thing that came up for the 2022 economic census was remanufacturing. So we've seen a lot of different changes in the remanufacturing area and manufacturing sector, with basically what remanufacturing is taking a product that's nearly finished, putting some new parts in it, and then finalizing that product for remanufacturing. And then, of course, telemedicine was a big industry that popped up during the pandemic. So I'm sure many of us have had a doctor's appointment or two virtually during the pandemic. So telemedicine was a great industry that we saw a lot of change in revenue for over this period of time of 2022. And then we also have the North American Product Classification System, better known as NAPS. We released a couple different new products on cannabis, cryptocurrency, and also electric vehicles. So growing industries that we see a lot of change in revenue for from the economic census. We also have some industry expansion. So for the first time in about 45 years, we were able to publish data for the support activities for crop production and support activities for animal production, which are normally covered by the USDA. So we were able to expand the industries that we were covered in the economic census. So for the NAICS 115, that's the basic industry level for the industry subsectors for animal and crop production. Those are the 2 industry subsectors that you see below that we were able to publish for the first time in quite a while. So we asked for a couple different basic data items from the businesses that reported to the economic census. We want to know their primary business activity. So whether or not they're a retail location, a manufacturing plant, or potentially a wholesaler, all those different types of things are covered in different sectors of the economy. Also, the receipts, the year-end 2022 revenue and sales that they created from their business. That goes a long way of telling us some of the different great businesses that are in the United States. And if the data shows that those businesses are thriving, potentially you want to take the leap to open up your own business or expand your business too. And then employment and payroll are two key things we see in the economic census that gives us a little bit more information about the workers and how many people you might have to hire if you open up a business of a similar type. As you can see from this slide, the economic census is wrapping up. We've already gone well ahead of schedule as kind of the accelerated data release plan has been for the economic census for 2022. We started in January 2024, and our last release, the miscellaneous subjects release, will go out next week. The final one of the final table to wrap up 2022 economic census. And I believe that's April 30th that the last release is going to go out. So you can see all the different things that we've dove into on various webinars, presentations, and outreach products over this period of time. And of course, we're already looking ahead to 2027. We're looking to standardize content between the annual integrated economic survey, another survey you'll hear me talk about later on, and also the economic census data collections, looking for comparisons that we can use in both of those different data sources. We're also going to leverage external and alternative data, looking for other ways we can use either data from the business register, from IRS records that we use for statistical purposes, or other potential experimental data products that we're always trying to keep up with at the Census Bureau. And also identifying emerging topics. Like I mentioned, telemedicine was a big industry that came up during that period of time. Whether or not we see other industries booming during this period of time up until 2027 is yet to be seen. We're always keeping our ear to the ground and keeping up with all the different news cycles and things like that in order to make sure we identify those emerging topics. Always looking to accelerate data production, get those data out the door much quicker and efficiently, and still at the same standards that the Census Bureau practices. And of course, in outreach area, one of the fun things we get to do is we create interactive and flexible data products. This allows us to come up with great infographics, American Count Stories, which is our writing series for the Census Bureau, and also a couple of different interactives. We also have a new cross-program economic data page. The way you can get there is going to census.gov/economic data, which you can see right there on the right-hand side of the screen. And I see my colleague Lucy has also put that in the chat for you guys to go for the direct link. So it's a restructured business and economy data page. Look, some of the cool things we put in there recently is we have the latest econ produced visuals and products. For example, the state snapshots from the economic census was one of the things we put in there. And we also have data from the annual integrated economic survey as well in that data page as well. We also have several different ways you can learn about how to use our data, from data gems, which are small little video snippets about little tips and tricks that we have from our data tools, webinars like you're hearing today, and also data tool demos. I'll be doing a demo later on today for a data tool called Census Business Builder. It's going to dive into economic and demographic data that's overlaid onto a map. And then we also have data for featured industries. We always learn about more industries and surveys and where their data actually comes from. So like I said, whether you're a retail location, wholesaler, manufacturer, those types of things, or in services potentially, those are all the different things we want to capture. So like I mentioned before, the state economic snapshots provide, like the name implies, a snapshot of what's going on in each of those states' economy. So for example, you see the one on the right-hand side of your screen for Delaware. They have select sectors by number of employees, statistics for the state compared to the United States, so how they rank in different sectors of the economy, and also the percent of total state and local government expenditures by function. So again, looking at our Census of Governments data, incorporated in that same type of state snapshot. The URL is down below, and I believe we've placed it in the chat for you for all 50 states plus DC. This is a state economic snapshot example for the state of Massachusetts. So the top 5 sectors for number of establishments in 2022 are retail trade, professional, scientific, and technical services, construction, healthcare and social assistance, and accommodation and food services. You can see those sectors right over here by the number of establishments over here on the purple bars over here. We also saw that Suffolk County, Massachusetts led the way for finance and insurance revenue. on the yellow bars on the part of the screen. And the full state snapshot is available at the visualizations page down below. We also put out several different data visualizations during the 2022 economic census cycle. One of those ones was an interactive data display, which allowed you to access statistics for revenue, number of employees, first quarter payroll, annual payroll, and the number of establishments. So the way this basically works is you would hover over the data on the right-hand side of your screen once you get to that data display, and you would select your statistic, select which NAICS hierarchy you were looking for, and then go to the actual state that you're looking for data for. The size of the circle corresponds to the how big the statistic is. So for example, if we have one state that's the largest for revenue for a particular industry, that would have the largest circle after you do the different data displays and filters for that. All right, next up is the Annual Integrated Economic Survey, our newest survey here in the Census Bureau's Economic Directorate. The way you can get to the data page is going to census.gov/AIES. So this is a little bit more about the AIES. We have 7 discontinued surveys, which you may have heard about in past webinars if you stayed in tune with all the different things going on in the Census Bureau. We had things like the Annual Capital Expenditure Survey, Annual Retail Trade Survey, Annual Survey of Manufacturers, and beyond. Looked at basically sectors related data for each of these different annual programs. So what we did was we wanted to come up with a comprehensive national survey that goes into the U.S. businesses for employers, and it looks at data from at the national, regional, divisional, and state level data on business revenues, which is another key part of what makes the AIS so powerful, is because we were missing a lot of the revenue components for certain sectors of the economy on an annual basis, whereas before we'd only see it in the economic census and a couple other related surveys. But it does have revenue data on an annual basis now from now on, expenses, payroll, and employment on an annual basis, like I mentioned before. So this survey was sent to approximately 350,000 companies that cover domestic and non-farm employer businesses. The participation for these respondents was mandatory, but we kept the data under strict confidentiality rules to ensure that the businesses felt comfortable reporting their year-end numbers to us under our own protections in Title 13 and Title 26. So a little bit more about the AIS. It came from a National Academy of Sciences panel that studied all the annual economic surveys administered by the Census Bureau, and they provided us with some key data recommendations in 2018. So some of the drivers of this effort included media data user needs. Why go to 7 different annual survey programs when you can just go to one? Looking at improving efficiencies, how we can streamline some of the different things we do within the Census Bureau in order to stay relevant, reducing costs and reducing respondent burden. Obviously, we're sending less surveys out. And also, if you're a company that's starting a business and you've got maybe 4 different surveys from the Census Bureau looking at your year-end numbers, you may only see 1 or 2 now. So we're trying to reduce the respondent burden wherever possible for businesses in the United States. So some of the benefits of the AIS is a modernized collection instrument, which reduces respondent burden, like I mentioned before, and promotes higher data quality. So the same quality that you can expect for the Census Bureau's original standards are always going to be there for the AIS. And also geographically granular data on an annual basis, going down to all the way to the state level for data for revenue and other employer expenses and things like that. Timely data releases and a uniform publication schedule. I'm going to go to the next slide in just a moment to show you exactly how we're going to be accelerating that for the next few iterations of the AIS. And then also enhancing operational efficiencies through standardized data collection. So basically looking for different ways we can improve all the different things that go on in the economic directorate. All right. So this slide talks about the status by survey year. So as you can see, it took us a little bit of time to get things up and running, but we're really hitting the ground running now. In 2023, we launched the first version of the AIS in March of 2024. The first look data came out in July of 25. The main release the full release came out in February 2026. And then experimental data release is still expected later on this year in the spring, I believe next week as well, April 30th for the experimental data product release. Some of those experimental data products have already been released. We're just releasing the final one on April 30th. And then for the 2024 AIS, this was launched in March of 2025. It closed out in the fall, and you can expect new data already for the next version of the AIS, the 2024, in the summer/fall of this year. And of course, we relaunched the new data collection for 2025 in March of 2026, which will close out later on that same timeline that you can see over here. So this is some of the things you can find within the AIS. Summary statistics include sales, value shipments, or revenue, depending on which sector of the economy they're going for. Production workers, inventories, and expenses. We also see a lot of customer and e-commerce statistics too. This includes things such as telemedicine. So like I mentioned before, looking at key industries that have changed over time. And also electronic health record systems, looking at wherever we can leverage the data sources in order to make sure that we provide the most relevant and timely data possible. And of course, our experimental data releases are a big part of the AIS data too. We have summary statistics by state for retail services and wholesale sectors. The NAPS, or North American Product Classification System, our product release has already been released. And the last data release for the AIS for this particular cycle is our capital expenditures, coming out next week. The way you can stay tuned to our AIS data is the data page found on the bottom of your screen. And one of the newest data visualizations for the AIS is our new data display that talks about visualizing the U.S. economy and exploring these sectors by geography. So basically the way this works is you would hover over different data displays on here for the different states by the different regions of Northeast, Midwest, South, and West. And the data display would change on the right-hand side of your screen depending on which statistic you select. So revenue is a screenshot that I did for this one. Annual payrolls would be another statistic you can use, along with first quarter payroll and number of employees, and allows you to look at the full data set as well, if that's what you're interested in. All right, switching gears a little bit to another annual program. We have the County Business Patterns, or CBP for short. This one covers employer establishments in the United States, published on an annual basis, and the latest data available as of today's date is for calendar year 2023. However, the new data is right behind us. It's coming up in September 2026. This will include statistics on the number of establishments, again, single physical location of businesses, employment and payroll for nearly every 2 through 6 digit NAICS code. So it goes down to pretty granular levels. Data are published in the national, state, metro area, county, congressional district, which is the only economic program that does that at the congressional district level, and zip code levels as well. And it does cover our 5 U.S. territories as well. And on the left-hand side of your screen, you can see an example of how we've repackaged some of the County Business Patterns data, talk about how the average annual payroll per employee changes over time. So basically, we're looking at the 2023 data for County Business Patterns, and this one has a data display of all the different sectors of the economy with information leading the way for the average annual payroll per employee. And then, of course, we look for ways we can also repackage data for key observances like Manufacturing Week, which is an effort that I lead here at the Census Bureau. And that occurs the first week in October. So you can see manufacturing is highlighted in the red bar over here on the left-hand side of the data display. It's the same data that we published before. We're looking at new ways to kind of get the word out there about the manufacturing going on in the United States too. So a little bit more about County Business Patterns, also shown by employment size of the establishment and legal form of organization. And more information about the County Business Patterns can be found at the URL here. Another annual program that's popular is the non-employer statistics. This covers all, like the name implies, non-employer businesses in the United States. So they have no paid employees. These are gig workers, or another way of saying They work multiple jobs and make ends meet, or it could be their primary source of income for some people too. We see a lot of different categories that you can see on the left-hand side of your screen, such as taxi limousine services, couriers and messengers, landscaping services, home daycare, stuff like that are all part of the gig economy that make up the non-employer statistics. And it's a big part, like I mentioned before that slide, that says about 30 million businesses are non-employers in the United States. So they are subject to federal income tax. That allows us to use our business register to track that data and get more information about non-employers. It's published on an annual basis. So as of 2020, April 2026, today's date, it's for calendar year 23. But like I said before, we're always looking for the next best thing. The 2024 data will be released on June 25th. So something to look forward to coming up this spring. And then what are non-employer statistics continued? These data are published in the national, state, metropolitan, and micropolitan statistical areas, or MSAs, combined statistical areas, or CSAs, and even the county geographic levels. So, like in the beginning, Lucy was talking about how we recommend starting at the county level, working your way down to the four-digit industry group, and seeing what other data is available as you move down each of those different parts of that pyramid that we showed you before. So non-employer statistics also show data by the revenue size at the national level and legal form of organization at the national and state levels. Next up is our annual business survey. This covers employer businesses in the United States, co-sponsored by the U.S. Census Bureau and National Center for Science and Engineering Statistics. So like the name implies, published on an annual basis. And so if you're looking for information on how many veteran-owned, let's say, flower shops there are in the state of Florida, you can get that information from the annual business survey. If you're looking for the number of Asian-owned restaurants in the state of Maryland, you can get that information from the annual business survey as well. So looking at our rich business owner data. So you can see the 2025 final data for the ABS, or the annual business survey, will be released this fall. Fall 2026. And this includes statistics on the number of firms. So again, number of companies, kind of use interchangeably that. Employment, annual payroll, sales, shipments, and receipts, or revenue for nearly every 2 through 4-digit NAICS code. So that's where that 4-digit NAICS code comes into play that Lucy talked about in the beginning of the presentation. Starting there and then working your way down. So a little bit more about ABS. Data are published at the national, state, county, and place levels. So it goes down to pretty granular levels as well. And also it's part of the BIRD survey, or the Business Enterprise Research and Development Survey, where as data was previously collected on just that standalone survey, it's now going to be incorporated into the ABS from now on. And that's part of the partnership that we have and continue to get the word out there about the annual business survey. And the survey page is found here below and also in the chat. And then the counterpart to the annual business survey is a non-employer statistics by demographics. So this covers all the non-employer data in the United States and the demographics on those non-employer business owners. So this is published on an annual basis with the latest data available for calendar year 2023, and includes the number of non-employer firms and the revenue for each of those different categories. Data are published in the national, state, metro, and county levels. So it go down to pretty granular levels as well. However, this does not cover the 5 U.S. territories at this time. All right. Next up is data.census.gov, which is one of our main data dissemination platforms. So on this one, we have a data display of a state profile for the state of Massachusetts. And basically what you're seeing here on your screen is a couple of different things. The first one, we have direct links to county business planners and non-employer statistics data, but we also have data for a snapshot of the total population, which comes from our American Community Survey, or the annual survey that takes place in years not of the main decennial census. We also see employment rate, housing units, and then our rich business data of total employer establishments comes into play over here too for the state of Massachusetts. So you can view the full profile by going to each of these different links within the data display here too. All right, now that I've level set for you guys some of our annual surveys, some of our key economic censuses and census of governments, let's talk about ways you can create a business plan. First step is ideation. Coming up with a great idea for a business goes a long way in creating your future success. So whether that's opening up like a retail location, a manufacturing plant, or a service, coming up with great ideas goes a long way. The second step in creating a business plan on just a granular level is conducting your market research. This is where data like the economic census and annual integrated economic survey can go a long way in developing your business plan. Using data tools like data.census.gov or even Census Business Builder, which I'll show you later on today, helps you identify those key markets. And then step 3 is securing funding. We have partnerships with SBA or Small Business Administration. You'll hear more about that coming up in a couple weeks for Small Business Week, which takes place in the first week of May. And there's an American Council story coming out related to that I wrote that's going to be talking about some of the different small business resources and also links back to this webinar too, of course. And also looking for ways you can determine the best location, whether there's going to be enough foot traffic, things like that can all go a long way until the final step where you can open your business and start to make some money and do great things with your business. And we're always here to help. So this is different ways you can create a business plan. The first step, again, like I mentioned, is ideation. Thinking of different things about whether or not it's a business that caters to other businesses or to the general public. So if you're looking at the business to business standpoint, you got to consider a couple of key questions. Who are your customers? So again, who's going to be the people coming to your business on a daily basis? Who are your competitors? Who could potentially take business away from your company? And then who are your suppliers, complementary businesses, things like that? Who's going to be providing the right materials, the right resources in order for you to continue to make sure your business stays afloat? So let's say, for example, you want to open an automobile parts and accessories store. You can see the NAICS code right over here, the full 6-digit industry over here. So if it's a business that caters to the general public, let's think about a couple of the things to the answers to those questions we posed before on the previous slide. So the customers are primarily live with we're auto repair shops who live within 20 miles of my business. So again, looking at other different ones, you can see on the Census Business Builder data tool about how many of these automobile parts and accessory stores there potentially could be in different geographic locations, whether that be in the county, state level, and other industry levels, whatever the data is available for. Competitors are other auto parts stores in my area. So looking at see how many there actually are, how well they're doing by looking at the revenue for each of these different types of areas, and seeing if it's worthwhile to open up another one of these types of businesses. And then suppliers are auto part wholesalers. So looking at complementary businesses, which include auto repair facilities and much more. So this is just one example of many, and I'll dive into another case study in just a moment. Before I do that, it's important to look at the Census Bureau geographic concepts and seeing how that goes a long way in finding the data that you're looking for in order to make a data-driven business plan. So almost all of our surveys and programs go down to the national level, or the whole United States. And then we see a couple different ones that we have on certain surveys and programs, such as states, counties, congressional districts. Like I mentioned before, county business patterns. This gives you the congressional district level, which allows the data tool of my congressional district to get its real power for that. We also see 805,000 geographic areas and 35,000 communities as part of the different parts of looking at the geographic area. So the general rule of thumb for our economic data is to start at either the state or county level and then work your way down to some of these places, census tracts, or even block groups to see what data is available for that. Some of the data that you can see in the blue is mostly from our American Community Survey, but we use the data from our business surveys as well to supplement some of the things as well too, and data like data tools like Census Business Builder. Which is next? The way you can get there is if you want to follow along with me, you can go to cbb.census.gov. What you'll see when you get there, and once I go live in just a moment, is looking at a basic data display that, like I mentioned before, overlays economic and demographic data onto a map. So before I go live, I want to show you just a couple of things you would see on your data display. In this example here, I created an example of different counties in the Boston region of Massachusetts. looking at restaurants as our main industry here. So I chose the primary variable of establishments versus non-employer firms to kind of get a weight as figuring out how many employer establishments there are and how many potentially food trucks or small eateries there might be for the non-employer side of that too. You also can see how different counties compare to other counties within that geographic ranking. We also have imports data in there. And then we have some data that you can manipulate on the chart too for the data display. Okay, so that's a basic example of CBB. So let me go live now. So you should be able to see on my screen Census Business Builder. So the way this data tool works is we have a couple different ways of operating it. We have the take a tour option, which is mostly for novice users or people that want to learn more about the data tool and its key functionality. Or you can start by searching for a location. So if I want to go to Fulton County, Georgia, I can start by typing that in. You can see some of the things are starting to display. And I'm going to do a couple of different parameters within my secondary or primary variables before I go to one of my examples for opening up a restaurant. So I can see establishments is my primary variable. This is for all sectors of the economy, first of all. Now, if I choose my secondary variable, I'm going to click on the bar in the middle of your screen, and I'm going to click on business annual, non-employers, and use the drop-down arrow of all non-employer firms. Oops, that was my primary variable. Let me try that again. So the primary variable I want for business annual, employers, and all employer establishments. And then the secondary variable, I forgot to click on this category over here. I'm going to click on business annual, non-employers, and then again, non-employer firms. Okay, now that I've set my secondary and primary example for all sectors of the economy, I can do a quick comparison. So 40,949 businesses of all types have people with paid employees. 136,717 have no paid employees. So it shows how the non-employers far outweigh them. Now let's choose a custom industry. If I go to restaurants, by typing in a keyword search for that, you don't even need to know your NAICS code. You can type in keywords in Census Business Builder, and key things will pop up in your data search in order to help you find the data you're looking for, depending on which type of business you're trying to open. So after this data populates, it'll start to populate in just a moment. For the search for industries, a couple of different things you're going to see in there is anything with that keyword search for the search for industries, it's going to populate on your screen. Okay. So if that doesn't work, I will go to one of my that's pre-filtered, which I can see all I did was open up a new window that already displayed this before the webinar started in order to save time with the bandwidth and everything going on with the internet. So you can see a couple of different things that I did for key stats is revenue for non-employers, per household spending on dining out, which is part of the consumer spending data that we purchased from a company called Esri or ESRI that you can see on the bottom right of your screen, helped us develop this data tool. We also see the per household spending on food consumed at home and per household spending on food and drink on even trips for consumer spending data. So all this different types of data would be important for you to figure out if this is a good place to open up a restaurant. And if I collapse this data display for a moment, I can see where Fulton County is right here on the kind of the polygon over here for the unique data display for that. And then you can see by the color of the legend, if I expand the legend over here, this tells me how many, by my primary variable, how many establishments there are, how many restaurants there are, and how many non-employer ones there are by the size or the color scheme of each of those different things. So if I want to dive into some of the data for this, for Fulton County, Georgia, I can zoom in a little bit here too. And also I can change different data displays too by changing the base map. So if I want to look at the street map, for example, I can click on some of the different things within the base map too. So if I was trying to determine if there's enough foot traffic or a major interstate or things like that for this particular restaurant, I can change different data displays on here as well. Okay. And while that's loading, I'm going to go to the report, which tells you a lot of different things for Fulton County, Georgia for opening up a restaurant. So a couple of different things on here. You'll see we start off with import data. We go to our consumer residence data, which talks about the population. So if I was opening up a restaurant with a bar, the percent 21 years and over will be very important for me. Taking a look at by clicking on one of these charts or one of those statistics, the data display on the right-hand side will change. Other things we have for our business data, I'm going to show you real quick. I know we're getting short on time, but we also have data on the size of the business by the number of employees, average payroll per employee, and things like that that can help you go a long way in determining if this is the best place to open up your business. Other things you would want to see in here about the quarterly businesses, and the business comparison is a big thing. If you're mulling between multiple business types, between like let's say a retail location and maybe a service, educational services, things like that, and a restaurant, you can see how well those businesses are doing in this particular geographic area on a basis like this. And then finally, we have our consumer spending data at the bottom, which, well, like I mentioned before, we purchased from Esri and put back into the data tool for free for anybody that wants to utilize this data source. So let me go back to the presentation. This is a quick, brief demo about Census Business Builder. But this is just a taste of all the different data that you can find from Census Business Builder. So we have other different data tools that are available besides Census Business Builder. That's one of the more popular ones right now, but we have other ones like Quick Facts, which, like the name implies, gives you a quick version of everything going on a snapshot basis. My Congressional District, which is the power of county business patterns data in play for our economic data. We also have different things like On the Map for Emergency Management, which tracks our disasters in nearly real time for all the different things going on throughout the United States and the impact that has on the population and the economy of each of those things. And lastly, data.census.gov is another key data tool that you'll find all of our data on. So with that, we're going to wrap this up with a Q&A. So I'm going to turn it over to Linda to help us out with closing this out with some questions you guys have from the audience. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. So thank you everyone for your interest and time in attending today's webinar. And thank you, Lucy and Adam, for presenting our audience with great information and resources about how to use census data and tools to build a data-driven business plan. Now, today we have featured a fraction of data that you can get for free at the Census Bureau. To learn more about other statistics and data tools, please visit the Census Academy for the recording of this webinar, other webinars, and also additional resources as well. I also would like to extend an invitation to come join us next month on May 28th at 2 p.m. for a webinar called Discovering America's Workplace with the Longitudinal Employer Household Dynamics Program, where you'll learn about how workers and jobs interact across the U.S. economy. Also, please take note of the contact information on this slide for anyone that may be interested in a hands-on in-person training. We have data dissemination specialists that are available to provide this service to you. Also, if you have questions now or need more information after this webinar, please feel free to email us at census.askdata@census.gov. And to ask your question now, please submit your question using the Q&A feature, and I will read the questions out loud for Adam to respond verbally. So let me check the queue. All right, we have a question, Adam.
Okay.
Will there be someone to assist us with interpreting the data?
Okay, so that's a great question, and thank you for asking it. So with interpreting the data, we also have our data user and trade outreach email inbox for ewd.outreach@census.gov. I recommend starting there, and we can connect you directly with subject matter experts that work directly on each of those different surveys or programs with helping you with interpreting the data. If I don't know the answer, I can find somebody that can answer that question for you in more depth via email or a phone call, whatever you prefer.
Thank you. And we have another question. Is there data by congressional district in any of the data sets?
Yes, so County Business Patterns does offer data at the congressional district level. The way you can get there is by looking at either county business patterns data and selecting congressional district as your geographic level, or going to the My Congressional District tool. So on the previous slide, I showed you what that looks like briefly on the left, on the right-hand side of your screen in the middle, which allows you to either search for a zip code, or looking at a particular state, or even determining who your congressional representative is too, and looking at the economy data and population data, all for those different congressional districts. It's a great question.
Thank you. We have a related question. What about city and place level? What data sources do you recommend?
Yeah, so for city and place level, I'd recommend the economic census starting from there. As you use data, like data sets like data.census.gov, which tells you a lot of information about place level and block level data that's available, depending on what you're looking for, whether it be population or business and economy data. I'd recommend starting with the economic census, and then utilizing our data tools like Census Business Builder, like I showed you today, and seeing what data is available. If you see anything grayed out on your screen, it might be because we have to suppress the data because there's too few businesses at that particular geographic level. But if you have any questions, I'd be happy to address that via email or a phone call.
Thank you. And we have another question. Where can we find residential and commercial real estate data?
Yeah, so that's part of the report that I was starting to show you within Census Business Builder before we kind of ran out of time a little bit. There's much more data in there about housing units, the startups, residential places, such as how many rental units are available, things like that. And I've also written an article about how you can use census data for a realtor purpose. So I talked to a couple different people at a realtor conference about how they can use data tools like Census Business Builder in order to determine if it's a good place to potentially buy a home. Looking at how many people are available, potential renters that were ready to take the next step for owning property as well.
Thank you. The next question, are nonprofits represented in any of the data?
I don't believe so for the economic census, but if you want to send me that question, or we actually will have the transcript for this, I can get back to you with the exact answer on the nonprofit issue. But yeah, that's a great question. Stumped me at the moment.
Thank you. The next question, are there key economic health indicators that can be reported near real time, or are all the data collected, cleaned, and reported through a lengthy process?
It's kind of a two sides to that. So, yes, we do have different economic indicators. We look at the health surveys and health sector and that type of thing. There's healthcare and social assistance, which is the official name of the sector. But we also have different things like take more time that are undertaking, like the economic census every 5 years. We're looking for more data on for revenue and things like that. So the annual business survey and the AIS, annual integrated economic survey, can be your best bet for getting revenue data if that's one of the categories you're looking for health related data and health surveys and things like that. But we also have a full list on census.gov if by keyword search as well, which has gotten much better over time.
Thank you, Adam. This next question is in reference to the CBB demo. What is loading in the upper right-hand corner?
What is loading in the upper right hand corner? It's probably pulling the data at the same time as doing all the different. Anytime you move the map or anytime you click on something different, it allows you to load all the different data at that part. So we recommend zooming in as much as possible to the county level, starting there, and then working your way down as well. So so if it's still spinning, just give it a little bit of time, and the data should populate. But if you have any issues within the data tool itself, or you want to make sure it's not a browser issue or things like that, feel free to email or call us and we can connect you with the right specialist for each of those.
Thank you. The next question, is there an AI component in the CBB to extract data not included?
Not that I'm aware of. We do look at AI as a growing industry within the Census Bureau. For example, the Business Trends and Outlook survey has an AI component to it. We're looking at there's a story that I'm currently drafting and going through program area review right now on the Business Trends and Outlook Survey AI component when looking at how businesses are using AI, how it's changing over time, and whether or not they use it on a daily basis in their business operations. So, not that I'm aware of in Census Business Builder, but maybe that's something we consider for future use.
Thank you. There is a question about, is there an example of a business plan?
Sure. The recommendation we would have for a formalized business plan is our partnerships in SBA, Small Business Administration. But however, if you're looking for data directly from the Census Bureau on business plans, we have several different key resources on writing business plans as well that connect to either SBA representatives that have more specific ideas about what a business plan looks like. But we could also recommend data tools like Census Business Builder and the report function that I showed you today goes a long way in helping you formulate your business plan by looking at key industries you can manipulate and download in order to figure out the best way to do that. And if you ever need any feedback, we're here to help.
Thank you. The next question is, what type of information do you have on primary schools like Montessori, traditional, religious, and so on?
I don't know as much about that as far as it might be out of scope for the economic data, but I believe Census of Governments has some of the state and private schools in that data sets for Census of Governments data. So you might want to start looking there. But if you can't find what you're looking for, send me an email. I'll point you in the right direction. I'll make sure I get that answer for you.
All right, thank you, Adam. There's one more question. It's about printing in the Census Business Builder.
Mhm.
The person had tried to print and had experienced some problems
Okay.
and wanted to know if you had any tips.
Yeah, so we recommend downloading the report as a PDF, which is, if I go back into that, I'll show you what that looks like. So that we have the download button over here and also an export button over here. If you go to the actual export button and click CSV, that allows you to download the data from the report into that CSV file, or print PDF. It's going to look much cleaner if you do it there than a full screen print from your browser. And same thing with the map. You can go to return to map over here. And once it does that, if you're looking to actually download parts of the map, we also have download button here. And you could download a CSV/shape file in order to print for your needs. If you're looking for printing the map itself, I'd recommend starting at the full screen level and then doing a screen grab from there after you're done manipulating the data for the different variables that you're looking for there. It'll look much nicer. And then certain base maps like we have for a light gray canvas, imagery, OpenStreetMap, things like that, depending on your data needs, that may or may not be helpful for you.
Thank you, Adam. It's getting to the top of the hour. With respect to everyone's time, if we are unable to answer some questions, please feel free to use the contact information on this slide and send us your questions and we will get them answered. At this time, I would like to express our thanks again for attending today's webinar. Have a great day, everyone.